The night before my wedding, I found out that Ji Rufong had been keeping a charming mistress outside, and he even had a son with her. The boy was already 7 years old. In all that time, not a single rumor had spread through the capital. Yet, on the eve of my marriage, that very boy's nanny fainted at my doorstep with a child in her arms. I stood inside the gate, watching the unconscious boy lying outside, and immediately called for a physician. The nanny, sobbing, began shouting at me with spittle flying everywhere. "That's the legitimate son of the heir of the Duke of Zhen. If anything happens to him, your whole household is done for." Everyone in the capital knew that I was the future wife of the heir to the Duke of Zhen's household. Announcing the child's identity like that so publicly was clearly a deliberate provocation. I responded with perfect composure, letting the woman rant and rave without losing my temper. When she realized she couldn't provoke me, she switched tactics and started making a scene. Her goal was to goad me into calling the authorities and blowing the whole thing up. If the child's identity was revealed in court, it would disgrace both the Duke of Zhen's house and my own, the Earl of Yeoman's. My father, a respected Hanlon scholar, would likely call off the engagement himself to preserve his own spotless reputation. That's exactly what the mistress wanted. She never even had to show her face. Just like that, the wedding would be cancelled. She could sit pretty in the shadows and reap all the benefits. And if Ji Rufong ever questioned her later, she could shed a few tears and claim that I was the one who called the authorities, keeping herself entirely in the clear. What a deviously calculated move. Any other naive noblewoman would have flown into a rage on the spot. By the time she realized what was going on, her reputation and her engagement would already be in ruins. Her only fate left would be to live out her days in lonely obscurity. I shouted coldly, "Guards, tie up this troublesome old hag and drag her straight to the Duke of Zhen's manor. She dares to slander the heir by claiming he is a child out of wedlock. Let's see if Her Highness the Princess will be so forgiving." Ji Rufong's mother was once the most favored princess of the former emperor. Now, under the current reign, she held the unique and exalted title of Grand Princess. There was likely no woman more noble in the entire capital. I had both the woman and the child, these two hot potatoes, delivered to the Duke's estate. Since Ji Rufong couldn't keep it in his pants and made this mess, it was only right for his household to clean it up. I wanted no part of it. The old woman kicked up a storm, screaming and thrashing until a servant covered her mouth and dragged her off without mercy. Once they arrived at the Duke's manor, the servant repeated exactly what I had instructed him to say, detailing the origins of the nanny and the child. "Your Highness," he said, "Our Lady said that the Duke's name is too noble to be tainted by schemers. She trusts your wisdom and judgment. I won't disturb you further." The Grand Princess rewarded him with a small pouch of silver and sent back a phoenix hairpin for me, a token of thanks for protecting the Duke's reputation. She had grown up in the deep palace, where plots and manipulation were as common as breathing. The mistress's little trick was nothing she hadn't seen before. Word soon came from the outside. The Duke's household just carried out a body, bleeding from all 7 orifices. It was the same woman who caused a scene outside your gate. Not long after, the child was also brought out. He had no visible injuries, just fainted, it seems. I held the gold and jade phoenix hairpin in my hand, and its cold touch sent a shiver down my spine. The Grand Princess still cared about the child. Sending both the woman and the boy over had been a calculated move, not only to have the Grand Princess deal with that scheming mistress, but also to see how she truly felt about the boy. Now that I knew, I'd be better prepared for whatever might come. 02. I went to the princess's manor to watch a play as invited, only to run into a strange woman. From the moment I sat down, her eyes were glued to me. She was undeniably beautiful and charming, but even among the group of noble ladies present, there was something about her that didn't quite fit in. There was a flirtatious boldness in the way she looked, and her hairstyle was that of a married woman. With a delicate sway of her waist, she walked over to me, whispered a few words to the lady sitting beside me, and the two switched seats. Halfway through the performance, she suddenly removed a jade pendant from her waist and placed it on the small table between us. She nudged it toward me with her fingertip. Miss Shin, I believe you recognize this, she said, her eyes gleaming with a trace of smugness. I glanced at it briefly. Indeed, I recognized it. It was the jade pendant symbolizing Ji Rufang's identity. Ji Rufang's father had died while suppressing a rebellion. Ji Rufang inherited his father's title, becoming the youngest marquis in the capital. I asked, "What's your name?" She replied, "You can just call me Yuan Yang." I swept a glance at the princess, who avoided my eyes, then turned to Yuan Yang. "Since you convinced the princess to lure me out, I assume you have something to say. Go ahead." She gave a leisurely smile, as if she were the legitimate wife of Ji Rufang. "Since we'll be seeing each other often at the Duke's manor, I thought it would be nice to get acquainted. I've only heard the Duke mention you before. Now that I've seen you in person, I must say, you're not as dull as he made you sound." I curled my lips into a smile. Such a petty provocation, just listening to it gave me a headache. I ignored her and turned my full attention to the play on stage. The troupe at the princess's manor was truly one of the best in the capital. I wondered whether the Duke's household had an even better one. Yuan Yang kept her gaze fixed on my face. Not getting the reaction she wanted, her eyes darkened, and she suddenly took a sip of tea. "What's so interesting about this play? I've got a story that's far more exciting. Want to hear it?" I didn't respond. She scoffed and started telling it anyway. My father was Xue Jinxing, a great Confucian scholar and the former emperor's imperial tutor. My family, the Xue clan, was once one of the most prestigious families in the capital. I picked up a handful of melon seeds from the table and nodded. "Oh, the Xue family. Weren't you the ones executed for treason? Your father was executed for colluding with the enemy, right? And not just that, he was caught selling military rations, delaying supply to the front lines. Quite a few soldiers starved to death because of it. Execution was well-deserved." I shook my head at her. Her face turned ashen with fury. "Did I say something wrong?" I asked innocently. Her voice trembled with rage. "Ji Rufang and I grew up together. He was my fiancé. After my family's downfall, the engagement was called off, but his heart has always been with me. He hasn't married anyone all these years. If you hadn't saved his life, how could a daughter of a lowly earl's house possibly land such a prestigious marriage with the Duke's household? What he feels for you is gratitude, not love. You stole my engagement. What a tiresome thing to say." I flicked a melon seed into the dish, and one bounced up, accidentally hitting her in the face. Furious, she snapped, "You've already taken my marriage and now you dare to hit me?" I sighed and gently advised her. "Miss, even if the Earl's household is smaller, it's still a noble one. No offense, but are you really in any position to be the Duchess? Given your background, the best you can hope for is to be a concubine, raise his heirs, and if you behave yourself, live out your days in comfort." And that was that. If she heeded my advice, I wouldn't mind letting her stay in the Duke's manor and be cared for. It was just a matter of a few words. But if she insisted on throwing her life away, then the best I could do for her would be to prepare a decent coffin. "Marrying a man who doesn't love you, what's so high and mighty about that?" she sneered. I sighed. "I'm marrying into the Duke's household as his legal wife, not some maid to warm his bed. What do I need his love for? As long as he respects me, that's enough." She bit her lip hard, her eyes reddening, but she could say nothing more. Because she knew it was true that Ji Rufang respected me. Even the wild goose he presented as part of the betrothal gifts, he had personally hunted himself. During every festival, he would come respectfully to visit my parents, never once putting on airs as a nobleman. As for engagement, mutual affection is a luxury not everyone can afford. To treat one another with respect, like courteous guests, that was already the best one could hope for. Yuan Yang wiped away her tears and muttered bitterly, "Shen Yuqiang, I'll never forgive you. If not for you, Nanny wouldn't have died. Whether you admit it or not, you owe me a life." Watching her storm off proudly, I only felt pity. But then again, people who are truly pitiful often have only themselves to blame. As I was leaving the princess's manor, the princess awkwardly walked me out. I took her hand and smiled slowly. The Duke is your cousin. Once I marry him, I'll be your sister-in-law. My child will be your nephew. He's inherited the title of heir. One day, he'll be toasting you as his elder. He comes from a clean and noble line, not the descendant of traitors and rebels. The princess turned pale. Once she realized what I was implying, she quickly bowed and apologized. I was careless today. I will personally come to your residence to make amends. The next day, Yuan Yang showed up at the manor like usual, hoping to visit the princess, but was stopped by the guards at the gate. She cursed me furiously from outside, and in the end, when Ji Rufang overheard her, she got a scolding instead. 03. On the night of Qixi Festival, Ji Rufang and I were officially married. Just after we completed the ceremonial bows, Yuan Yang suddenly burst in with her child, fell to her knees at my feet with tears streaming down her face, and begged me to drink her concubine's tea, to spare her a way to live. She looked pitiful, her eyes brimming with tears, cheeks flushed red. Quite the tragic beauty. Ji Rufang stood beside me with his fingers clenched around the wedding ribbon. Though he scolded her aloud, a flicker of pain passed through his eyes. Who let you in? Get out now! After leaving the princess's manor, I had investigated their past. It was a typical tale of a talented scholar and a beautiful lady, a perfectly matched pair. But fate had taken a turn. Once a noblewoman fell into disgrace, there was no resuming a romantic tale of harmony and music. Especially with me, the uninvited guest, disrupting everything. Yuan Yang kowtowed violently. Her fair forehead split open from the impact, speckling the neat bluestone tiles with blood. Strands of hair fell from her temples. Pitiful, yet seductive. Enough. Ji Rufang pulled her to her feet. What exactly do you want? Wiping her tears, Yuan Yang pleaded, even if you don't care about me, you should care about the child. If I'm not given a proper title, how will Heng Ji be allowed to attend school? Then she knelt before me again. Please, madam, drink my concubine's tea. The guests looked on with great interest at the unfolding spectacle. My mother-in-law, already frail, was so angered she fainted on the spot, throwing the hall into chaos. I calmly lifted my veil and took charge of the scene. I had the matron taken to rest and sent a servant to fetch the imperial physician. Ji Rufang stood frozen. Watching his mother being carried away, his face turned pale, his eyes flickering with confusion and guilt. He opened his mouth to speak but fell silent again, shaking off Yuan Yang's hand in frustration. What are you trying to do? I didn't want them to keep making a scene and embarrass us further. Under Yuan Yang's shocked and uncertain gaze, I ordered the servants to bring the concubine's tea. Let's make it official, I said, sweeping my eyes over the guests before turning to Yuan Yang with a faint smile. Kneel and offer your tea. She had assumed that, as a highborn lady, I wouldn't tolerate such humiliation and would call off the wedding in anger. She never expected me to keep a straight face and even smile as I accepted her tea. Just like that, she was officially admitted into the Duke's household. Please, madam, drink this tea, she said, throwing aside her pride, desperate to secure a title and a place in the mansion. Being the Duke's concubine wasn't much different from being the wife of an ordinary household, and certainly better than remaining a nameless mistress. After I drank the tea, I smiled and removed the bangle from my wrist, slipping it onto hers. The Duke passed away early, and the household is thin in heirs. My husband is the only son. You've given the family a firstborn. From now on, the child will be raised under my care as the madam of the house. I'll be sure to look after him well. No sooner had I said this than Yuan Yang yanked her hand away. No! My hand hit the edge of the table, instantly bruising. Someone nearby cried out, how dare a mere mistress lay a hand on the lady of the house? Just because the Marquis favors her. Even the old madam fell ill from anger, and she's still allowed through the doors? What madness! Ji Rufang's face darkened. Yuan Yang, that's enough. Don't be disrespectful. Yuan Yang quickly hid her panic and anger, lowering her reddened eyes as she apologized to me. I'm sorry, madam. Hengjir is still so young. I should be the one to raise him. Covering my injured hand, I replied gently, I only want what's best for Hengjir. He's a boy, and one day he'll sit for the imperial exams. Being registered under my name will only help him. My eyes met Ji Rufang's. Yuan Yang, crying again, reached for Ji Rufang's hand. Husband, Hengjir is still small. He can't be without his mother. But for the first time, Ji Rufang didn't take her side. Instead, he looked at me and nodded. Hengjir will be registered under the madam's name. Someone come, escort the concubine to rest. Yuan Yang stopped crying and looked at him in disbelief, tears streaming down her cheeks as she was helped away. Her final glance, as she left, was full of resentment. She had entered the state-run music bureau at the age of 7. With no parents to guide her, she had never learned the intricacies of high society. She was a state courtesan. Although Ji Rufang had spent a great deal to buy her a respectable identity, the years she spent in the bureau could not be erased. It would always be a stain on her name. And it would be a stain on Hengjir as well. A child may raise the status of his mother, but equally, he could suffer disgrace because of her. Only if he were registered under my name would he have a smoother path in life. But unfortunately, Yuan Yang didn't understand such strategic considerations. All she saw was love. To her, it simply meant Ji Rufang no longer loved her. I raised my cup of wine and smiled at the guests. My mother-in-law has fallen ill from overexertion due to the wedding preparations. If anything in today's hospitality is lacking, I, Yu Qiong, humbly ask for your understanding. I looked toward Ji Rufang. He had been gloomy and silent all evening. With a subtle glance from me, he composed himself, lifted his cup alongside mine, and smiled as he echoed my words. If we've failed to entertain, we ask for your forgiveness. The guests all raised their cups and drank in unison, their conversations now filled with congratulations on the joyous wedding of the Duke's household. 04. That night, I sat alone until the third watch. Ji Rufang still hadn't come. Hengjir had already been brought to my courtyard. Meanwhile, Yuan Yang was throwing a fit, threatening to kill herself. One moment she wanted to hang herself, the next, she said she'd jump into a river. The maids Ji Rufang assigned to watch her kept a close eye, but even so, she found a window of opportunity and stabbed herself in the chest with a pair of scissors. After the imperial physician tended to my mother-in-law, Ji Rufang summoned him to treat Yuan Yang. He was so busy, he still hadn't come to consummate our marriage. My nanny went from anxious to disappointed.
She tried to console me.
Miss, go to bed. The Marquis isn't coming tonight. I shook my head. Tonight is our wedding night. He will come. No sooner had I spoken than footsteps echoed from outside. Ji Rufang entered, picked up the ceremonial scale, and gently lifted my bridal veil. Ah Cheong. He looked worn out, but his noble upbringing showed in his every movement. He respectfully shared the nuptial wine and raw dumplings with me, performing each tradition with care. Then came the final step, consummation. Halfway through, a servant came from Yuan Yang's courtyard, saying her wound had reopened and asked him to come see her. After everything she had stirred up on what should have been a joyful wedding day, Ji Rufang had clearly run out of patience. What am I, a doctor? You think I can stop the bleeding, he snapped. The servant fled in fear. When Yuan Yang realized he wouldn't come, she flew into a rage and smashed everything in her room. The maid I had planted by her side, her highest-ranking servant, didn't stop her. In fact, she even blocked others from intervening. I let her have her outburst. The next morning, Ji Rufang and I went together to pay respects to his mother, and we found Yuan Yang kneeling beneath the eaves, eyes red and cheeks swollen. Behind her stood the old nanny who had served my mother-in-law for years. As soon as Yuan Yang saw Ji Rufang, tears welled in her eyes. She tried to stand, but before she could move, the nanny shoved her back down. Ji Rufang frowned, clearly pained. Mother, isn't this punishment too harsh? His mother's voice was icy. She smashed everything in her room last night. That painting on the west wall was painted by the Grand Empress Dowager herself. If word of this reaches His Majesty, do you think she'll live to see another day? Ji Rufang looked at her in disbelief, disappointment creeping into his voice. When did you become so indulgent and reckless? Destroying an imperial gift, depending on the severity, could be punished by death. My mother-in-law sentenced Yuan Yang to copy Buddhist scriptures in the ancestral hall and arranged for a palace nanny to teach her proper etiquette. The days that followed were bitter and grueling. Ji Rufang, this time, did not intervene. I was given the household keys and began managing the entire inner and outer residence under my mother-in-law's supervision. Externally, I helped Ji Rufang build ties with both palace and court ladies from noble families, strengthening our network. Internally, I managed the affairs of the Duke's household with order and precision. Under my mother-in-law's strict discipline, Yuan Yang became more restrained. Ji Rufang still had feelings for her. After her confinement was lifted, he stayed in her courtyard for 15 nights straight. She took the chance to spread money around, buying loyalty from many servants. I simply watched in silence without interfering. Her boldness grew when she saw I wasn't reacting. One morning, when coming to greet me, she deliberately exposed the marks on her neck. Smiling, she said, "I keep telling the Marquis he should go visit you, dear sister, but he refuses. He insists on sleeping in my room every night." Just then, Ji Rufang returned from morning court, holding pastries from Qian Weizhai, followed by the imperial physician. Yuan Yang, clearly trying to get under my skin, called out sweetly, "Husband." Ji Rufang gave a soft grunt and walked directly to my side. He opened the pastry box and took out a freshly bought hairpin, sliding it into my hair himself. "It suits you perfectly," he said with a beaming smile. The physician behind him chuckled. The Marquis and his wife are truly in harmony, such a loving couple. Ji Rufang smiled and added, "Doctor, please check my wife's pulse once more." Yuan Yang gritted her teeth, then forced a smile. "I wonder what illness the lady has. If it's something serious, I'd be willing to take over the household duties on her behalf." Ji Rufang's expression stiffened. He scolded her in a low voice. "Don't speak nonsense." She pouted and gave a cold humph. After taking my pulse, the doctor grinned widely. "It's steady, very steady. I can finally report back to the Grand Empress Dowager with peace of mind. The madam is carrying twins. You must take extra good care of her." Ji Rufang froze for a moment, then burst into joyful tears. He immediately turned to the servants. "Quick, go tell mother the good news." Yuan Yang was left standing there pale as a ghost, her fingers digging into the armrest, lips bitten until they bled. It was only now that she realized how ridiculous her morning boasts over the past 2 weeks had been. The moment my mother-in-law entered, the smile on her face vanished. She scolded Yuan Yang furiously. "What kind of disgraceful behavior is this? Utterly shameful. Get out and change into something decent." Yuan Yang left in tears. That very day, I replaced every single person in the residence. Any servant who had even remotely leaned toward Yuan Yang in the past 2 weeks was reassigned. I don't need fence-sitters in my household. This entire scheme, to draw out the disloyal, succeeded thanks to the child growing in my belly. 05. Yuan Yang made a scene with Ji Rufang again, but on the matter of managing the household, Ji Rufang was firm. "That's the duty of the legitimate wife. You stay out of it." Yuan Yang was so furious, she burst into tears and pulled out her usual tricks, crying, throwing tantrums, threatening suicide, all to demand that she be allowed to see Heng Jie. Truthfully, I hadn't restricted her from seeing him. It was my mother-in-law who disapproved of her behavior and forbade any contact, lest she corrupt the child. During this time, Heng Jie stayed with me. Aside from being a little stubborn, he was doing quite well. Perhaps he took after Ji Rufang. He didn't care much for books, but he had a keen interest in horseback riding and archery. After enough of Yuan Yang's crying, Ji Rufang began to feel sorry for her and eventually spoke to his mother on her behalf. At first, his mother was so angry she nearly flipped the table. "That's your own son. And that concubine of yours, what is she but a troublemaker? Every time Heng Jie sees her, he's upset. She can't teach him a single good thing." But she's still his birth mother. How can you stop them from seeing each other? Dinner conversations between mother and son always ended in arguments whenever this topic came up. Eventually, Yuan Yang pressed harder, and Ji Rufang somehow managed to convince his mother to allow her to see Heng Jier once every 10 days. Heng Jier was thrilled when he heard he'd be seeing his mother that day. I had a maid dress him in an extra layer before sending him out. He left happy, but came back with his head down and brows furrowed. I asked him what had happened, but he said nothing. I had a feeling something was off, so I secretly called in the nanny who looked after him and slipped her some silver. The next day, she came to report. Last night, the young master got up and went out under the locust tree in the courtyard to dig a hole and bury something. I had it dug up and was shocked. There was a cursed voodoo charm inside, with my name written on it. She was cursing the death of the child in my womb. Grinding my teeth, I let out a cold smile. I swapped out the paper, forged Yuan Yang's handwriting, and wrote down my mother-in-law's birth date and time. I had studied medicine under my grandfather from a young age, so I made a nourishing soup for my mother-in-law, who had reportedly been having trouble sleeping. The soup did help her sleep, but paired with the medicinal herbs sewn into my sachet, it also clouded the mind and dulled her senses. For several days, she seemed groggy and dazed, drifting in and out of wakefulness. Just then, the Empress Dowager announced she would be holding a grand Taoist ceremony at the palace, and overnight, Taoist priests from the mountains flooded into the capital. Coincidentally, a blind wandering priest came by the Duke's manor asking for water. My mother-in-law had always been a devout believer, so she invited him in and treated him kindly. After drinking, the priest shook his head at her. "Your days are numbered. Your doom lies buried beneath the locust tree in the southwest corner of your estate." With that, he vanished in the blink of an eye. The southwest corner was precisely where my courtyard stood. She immediately ordered people to dig under the tree, and there it was, a voodoo charm with her birth details. Furious, she ordered Ji Rufang to divorce me and have me sent to the authorities. I was about to shift the blame when Ji Rufang stepped forward to shield me. "Mother, Ah Cheong is not that kind of person. She would never do such a thing. If she's guilty, I'll stake my life on it." I was taken aback. Yuan Yang, who had been anxiously observing, flew into a rage. "She dares do it but won't admit it? What's her agenda?" I said at once. "Mother, this isn't my handwriting. Besides, I have no grudge against you. Why would I do something that harms both others and myself? Clearly, someone's trying to frame me by burying this thing in my courtyard and using your hand to get rid of me." Yuan Yang turned pale. "Lies. You did it and still won't admit it." My mother-in-law snorted and called in all the servants from my courtyard for questioning. It didn't take long before Heng Jier's nanny confessed everything. That night, the young master got up in the middle of the night. I saw him bury it. My mother-in-law slapped Yuan Yang across the face, her fury boiling over. Beat her to death with sticks. 2 servants immediately pinned her down. The first few blows came down hard. Heng Jier rushed in and shielded her with his body. "I did it. I buried it. I wrote it. It wasn't my mother." My mother-in-law trembled with rage. "Ungrateful wretch. Beat him. Beat him until he's dead." Though Ji Rufang eventually stepped in and stopped it, several heavy blows had already landed on Heng Jier. Some had struck his lower back. That night, he came down with a high fever. My mother-in-law locked both him and Yuan Yang in the ancestral hall, forbidding anyone from seeing them. Yuan Yang cried all night, and in the end, she could do nothing but watch as her son burned to death in her arms. After that day, her mind was never the same. When she finally emerged from the ancestral hall, she came straight to me. Her smile twisted, eyes dazed. "So evil, reap evil, ha 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 ha. I gave it back to you, ha ha ha." The servants dragged her away. Ji Rufang called in an imperial physician, and later she appeared more or less normal again. 06. When I was 6 months pregnant, the Imperial Secret Police, Jinui, surrounded the entire Duke's manor. The Third Princess faction submitted a memorial to the court, accusing the Duke's household. They claimed that the previous year's suppression of the southwestern bandits was riddled with corruption. They alleged that Ji Rufang's father had colluded with the bandit leader, which explained why the rebellion had dragged on for years. Such absurd claims. Yet His Majesty believed them. Though he only ordered the manor surrounded, he immediately imprisoned and executed General Yang and his entire family. General Yang had been Ji Rufang's father's deputy at the time. While our whole family cowered in fear inside the manor, Yuan Yang seduced one of the Jinui guards, disguised herself as a vegetable vendor's maid, and attempted to escape. Unfortunately, she was caught soon after. The guard who had aided her was flogged to death on the spot. Ji Rufang's eyes turned red, his fingers trembling as he clutched Yuan Yang's hand.
Why?
Haven't I treated you well enough? Why would you do this to me? Yuan Yang trembled like a leaf in the wind. She threw off his hand and screamed, her face pale as death. I want to live. I don't want to die. I won't go back to the music bureau. She clutched her face in madness, muttering to herself. At my age, the bureau won't take me back. They'll send me to the military camps to serve as a camp prostitute. I don't want that. I can't. Ji Rufang looked devastated, eyes bloodshot and near breaking. He took a deep breath, barely holding back tears. Yuan Yang, we grew up together, we were engaged. When your family fell, I begged my mother to give you a new identity, to pull you out of the music bureau. Because of you, my mother punished me with the family cane. The scars on my back are still there. All these years, before I married, I had only you. You refused to take the contraceptive decoction, and I gave in. When the child was born, my mother nearly beat me to death in a rage. I got down on my knees and begged her to let you enter the household. She slapped me across the face and said I'd lost my mind. Tears streamed down his face, his grief unmistakable, his voice hoarse. I had lost my mind. You were so small and delicate in my arms, saying I was your only support. Yuan Yang, I nearly reached 30 without taking a wife. I ruined my reputation for you. I fought with my mother for you. Even marrying Ah Cheong, it was because she was kind and tolerant, because she could accept you. But, Yuan Yang, this is how you repay me. Yuan Yang broke down, shoving him aside and screaming. But don't you see? You're useless now. You're going to die. The emperor already wiped out the Yang family. How much longer do you think you have? I just want to survive. What's so wrong about looking for my own way out? The light in Ji Rufang's eyes went out. Yuan Yang, did you ever love me?
No. No.
I didn't, she shouted with venom. I gave myself to you because back then, only you could save me. But now you can't. So, why shouldn't I find someone else? She had torn off the last of her mask, showing her true face for all to see. By this time, even the Grand Princess, Ji Rufang's mother, had fallen ill. The imperial doctors weren't even allowed to enter the manor. Our daily meals had gone rotten and foul. Ji Rufang took a step back, wiped away his tears, and said bitterly, I must have been blind. You make me sick. He stormed out the door. Yuan Yang collapsed on the ground, sobbing. After nearly a month of house arrest, everyone's nerves were fraying. Back in my chambers, my nanny brought a message from my mother. I was to separate from Ji Rufang if I wanted to preserve my life. The next day, I went to the study to eat with Ji Rufang. In just one night, his once handsome features had grown haggard. A shadow of stubble darkened his chin. When he saw me, he let out a bitter laugh, dragged himself up from the floor, picked up the signed divorce document from the desk, and threw it at me. Get out, he said coldly. I turned to look at my nanny, my gaze icy. She avoided my eyes. Miss, I'm doing this for your own good. My voice went cold. Leave. They closed the door behind them. Now it was just the two of us.
He scoffed.
I don't have time for your nonsense. Just get out. All women are the same.
Get lost.
I walked over silently and slapped him hard across the face. His head snapped to the side. Before he could react, I slapped him again, this time even harder. He roared, Are you insane? I slowly tore the divorce papers in my hands. Ji Rufang, you're the son of a noble family. Your father was a celebrated general. Your mother is the Grand Princess with military command and her own lands.
You?
You were a gifted young man, the top military scholar, a war hero with countless victories under your name. And now, you're going to sit here and rot away because of a woman? I grabbed his hand and placed it on my belly. Inside here is your own flesh and blood, your children. Am I supposed to tell them their father was a coward who ran away from everything? His eyes instantly reddened. Tears fell as he whispered, "Ah, Cheong." I gripped his hand tightly. "Ji Rufong, you must believe in your father. He spent his life in the saddle. He died while suppressing rebels. He was innocent." Word by word, I said, "Your father, the late Duke, was a man of honor."
His voice shook.
"But His Majesty doesn't believe it." "Then make him believe it," I said. "If we're doomed either way, we might as well fight." I took the sword, Clear Wind, from the wall and placed it in his hand. "The Southwestern Rebellion is raging. His Majesty only made a move against your household now because the third prince is pressing hard. You have military power, yet you didn't take his side, so he wants to strip you of it and hand it to his own people. And your mother's private army and land grants? Those were bestowed by the late emperor himself. There are even rumors that the late emperor considered naming her crown princess. When you see His Majesty, you must voluntarily offer to return your mother's private army and fief. Then, request an edict to lead the troops against the rebels. No one in court is willing to go, they all fear death. But you must go. That's your only way out. You still command troops. The Southwest is a historic battlefield. The bandits there are all skilled fighters. If you can bring them under your banner." I didn't need to finish the sentence. If there was no road left, then raise the banners of rebellion. Fight even if it meant death. "Ji Rufong, I am your lawfully wedded wife. You must win a future for me and for our children." He looked up. Slowly, his hunched back straightened, and the gleam returned to his eyes. "All right." 07. Ji Rufong tried every possible way to request an audience with His Majesty, but nothing worked. That I had expected. Just when he had run out of options, his mother hanged herself. In the letter she left behind, she instructed Ji Rufong to carry her corpse to the palace and present it to the emperor. No one would dare to stop him then. Ji Rufong wept until he fainted. As I looked at the Grand Princess's lifeless body, my eyes held neither sorrow nor joy. This was the outcome I had foreseen. From beginning to end, only the Grand Princess's suicide would compel His Majesty to grant an audience. The gates of the Duke's manor were finally opened. Ji Rufong, following my instructions, handed over the Grand Princess's private troops and her fief, and formally requested an edict to suppress the Southwestern Rebellion, seeking to clear his father's name. His Majesty, as expected, agreed. Ji Rufong knelt outside the throne hall and pleaded for only one favor. "Your subject's wife is with child. For the sake of our bloodline, I ask that your Majesty ensure her safety and well-being." Now that the Grand Princess was dead, the Emperor had no reason to refuse. Ji Rufong had no time to bid me farewell. He sent me a letter through someone else. "I've known Physician Zhang for years. He'll give you medicine to end the pregnancy. If I die, remarry. All the wealth of the Duke's household will be your dowry. If I return alive, we can have as many children as you want. Be good, Ah Cheong." Attached was a signed divorce paper. I sat on the swing under the sunlight, holding the letter loosely in my hand, feeling a kind of lazy emptiness. Mother came running, scolding me for being foolish, crying and asking why I wouldn't leave. I let out a soft laugh, helplessly looking at her naive face. "Mother, even if His Majesty doesn't love the Grand Princess, she was still his sister. They are family. He might not care for her life, but he will care about the royal family's reputation. If I leave Ji Rufong now, don't you think His Majesty would come after me? He'd only see me as a woman who couldn't endure hardship. For the sake of royal pride, he would have me poisoned without hesitation. And worse, he might drag the entire Earl's family down with me. Ji Rufong and I were not just husband and wife, we were bound by shared interests. When one rises, both rise. When one falls, both fall. I stared at the divorce paper in my hand, momentarily lost. Will he win? My mother asked through tears as she held me. He will, I answered. He stepped onto the battlefield at 14. He's a little general who's never known defeat. Of course he'll win. No matter how questionable Ji Rufang's personal conduct might be, I had to admit, on the battlefield, he was a victor without peer. When I was 9, Mother took me to see the lanterns. That night, remnants of a rebel faction stormed the streets. In the chaos, I got separated from her. The rebels, in their bid to escape the city, each grabbed a defenseless civilian. I was one of them, a blade held to my neck as I cried in fear. The one who came to put down the rebellion was Ji Rufang's father, the old duke. Back then, Ji Rufang was 14. Arrogant and wild. He cursed the man holding me. What kind of coward takes a little girl hostage? If you've got guts, take me instead. The rebels, provoked, agreed. After all, Ji Rufang was the old duke's only son. The old duke cursed him as a reckless brat, but Ji Rufang just grinned and, before anyone could stop him, traded himself for me. In the chaos of the fight, he pushed me aside and took a sword to the neck. He nearly didn't survive. He bled so much the ground was soaked. The scar on his neck is still there today. At 14, Ji Rufang had been bold and fierce, full of youthful fire. He was like a gust of wind, sudden, overwhelming, and impossible to ignore. He had once been the hero of my girlish dreams. When I came of age, I went to the mountains to gather herbs and found Ji Rufang injured and poisoned by a snake. I thought the heavens had granted me a chance to repay his kindness. I saved him. The Grand Princess bestowed a marriage between us. I accepted. Back then, I was truly happy. He had frowned slightly, as if wanting to refuse, but in the end, he agreed. Perhaps it was because I wasn't pretty enough. Perhaps my background wasn't noble enough. That's why he hesitated. He didn't love me, but that was fine. As long as he respected me, as long as we could treat each other with courtesy, that was enough. A political marriage. Wasn't that what most couples had? I was 15 then. Before our engagement, my mother had arranged many suitors for me. Each had their faults: gamblers, womanizers, men with no proper occupation. Compared to them, Ji Rufang was the best. At least he respected me. At least he came from a good family. At least he had money. I never asked him to love me. I thought, life is long. I had repaid him for saving my life. If he treated our children well, I would manage the Duke's household with diligence. That year, Ji Rufang was 25, already the oldest eligible bachelor in Chang'an. He hadn't married because he had a beloved mistress. But I still married him. And yes, he was rich. Because Yuan Yang ruined our wedding, guilt made him pay to rebuild an entire estate for my mother. From the very beginning, he had told me clearly, "I'll give you the dignity of a wife, all of my wealth, and our children will be the sole heirs. But Yuan Yang, she's the woman I love. Please be tolerant of her." He wasn't a good husband, but as a provider, he was exceptional. Sometimes I even envied Yuan Yang. Envy that, even after falling into disgrace, there was someone who loved her so stubbornly.
07.
At the end of September, I gave birth to our child. Yuan Yang laughed at me, saying I was a fool for giving birth to Ji Rufang's child when he was practically on death's doorstep. I smiled and didn't answer. If he really was dead, that would actually be better. By then, even if only to silence public opinion, His Majesty would have to name my child the heir and ensure that the Duke of Zhen's household retained its honor and favor. I asked Yuan Yang curiously, "Did you really never love Ji Rufang?" "Not even a little." She scoffed, but there was unmistakable sadness in her eyes. "If you'd ever seen your family executed or suffered the whips in the music bureau, you'd know love is the least important thing in the world." I chuckled. "Then why did you come challenge me back then, insisting Ji Rufang didn't love me?" She smoothed her hair at her temple. "I didn't want you to marry him, so of course I wanted to upset you. You and I are different. He was all I had, my only lifeline. Even if I had to be the villain, I had to keep him. I gently stroked my child's head. Yuan Yang, go. Ji Rafang already changed your registry. You're no longer Shui Yuan Yuan. You're just yourself now. The accounting office can advance you money. Go do whatever it is you truly want. Because if you wait until Ji Rafang comes back, he'll probably kill you. In the end, Yuan Yang left. With Hengjie gone, she had nothing left to stay for. Where she went, I never found out. Only much later did she send me a box of rouge through someone else. She also sent word that she was doing well. She'd opened a cosmetics shop in the Jiangnan region, selling powders and perfumes. 8 years passed in the blink of an eye. The Grand Empress Dowager often asked me to bring the children into the palace to accompany her. She adored my little daughter, because she looked very much like the Grand Princess had when she was young. The Empress Dowager even granted her the title of Commandery Princess. For 8 years, Ji Rafang sent me a letter every month. Just 2 words, always the same. Wife, peace. But this month's letter had 2 extra words. Wife, peace. Husband, return. Ji Rafang was coming home. 08. The bandit threat was finally eliminated. Ji Rafang had returned. It took him 8 years to pacify the Southwest. He returned from the battlefield barely clinging to life. An arrow had struck him in the left eye. It had been coated with poison, and he was at death's door. Perhaps in an effort to appear a wise and benevolent ruler before the people, His Majesty sent the entire Imperial Medical Bureau to save him. It took 2 full weeks before he regained consciousness, only in the middle of the night. When he saw me, there was a gentleness in his eyes. Ah Qiong, you've grown even more beautiful. You look worse, I replied. He laughed and coughed. Years of wind and sun out there. I've aged. Don't dislike me. I don't. I glanced at the bandage over his eye. What happened to your eye? I did it myself. His Majesty is suspicious by nature. Only by injuring myself could I put his doubts about the Duke's household to rest. So, I could protect the 3 of you. I said nothing. The imperial physicians had told me, if they'd been even a little slower, he never would have woken up. He had been prepared to die. Ah Qiong. I'm sorry. What are you apologizing for? He lowered his gaze. I've lived an honorable life. But if there's one person I've wronged, it's you. I shook my head.
No.
He hadn't wronged me, not really. I had my own motives too. I was the legitimate daughter of a declining earl's household. My older brother was useless, and I had been sent to my maternal grandparents' home from a young age because a fortune teller said I would hinder my brother's career.
My cousins hated me.
They said my parents had abandoned me. My childhood was hard. I never had enough to eat or wear. When I was starving, I would forage for wild herbs. At age 9, my grandfather died, and my parents had no choice but to take me back. But even then, I wasn't allowed to live under the same roof as my brother.
No one cared about me.
I once fell into a well and nearly drowned. Everyone just said I had a cursed life, that I brought bad luck to my family. I had never known what it felt like to be cared for. Only Ji Rafang, at 14, risked his life to care for me. After he was injured, my parents threw me into the Duke's household to be dealt with by the Grand Princess. She cried and said that if anything happened to Ji Rafang, she would have me buried with him. I knelt and agreed. That life was his. I would return it. When he woke up, he begged his mother not to be harsh with me. He called me little sister and bought me a sugar figurine on the road home. He told the sugar sculptor to shape it into a sun. He told me to smile more, to be like the sun, warm and bright. I couldn't bear to eat it. I only took one lick in front of him, and it really was sweet, so sweet it brought tears to my eyes. He wiped my tears and teased, "Why do you cry so much? Shouldn't you thank your big brother?" I held the candy tightly with both hands and looked up at him, timidly saying, "Thank you, big brother." He grinned wide. "That's more like it. Good girl." He walked me to the gate of my home and patted my head. "See you again, little sister." That candy was later crushed under my real brother's foot, lying dusty and broken on the ground. I picked it up and shoved it into my mouth. All I tasted was bitterness, laced with sweetness. Now, looking at Ji Rufong, I said seriously, I never once blamed you. Just having you come back alive is enough for me. These days, I can eat my fill. I'm not beaten, not ignored. That's already more than enough. For someone who's never been loved, just being able to survive is a luxury in itself. Extra chapter. In the 4th year of Ji Rufong's campaign in the southwest, he encountered an ambush more brutal than any before. He was trapped in a mountain ravine for 4 days and 4 nights. Barely clinging to life, his mind somehow drifted to the image of his quiet, solemn wife back home. So composed she seemed almost like a living bodhisattva. When his mother had arranged the marriage, she had repeatedly assured him that the bride was a dignified, well-mannered noblewoman, surely the kind who would be able to tolerate the presence of his beloved concubine. And indeed, after bringing her home, she was dignified. Nothing like the little girl he remembered from their childhood. He had intended for them to be respectful companions. He already had Yuan Yang. He couldn't betray her. So he gave his wife all the honors due to a legal wife, as much wealth as he could spare. He remembered she liked sweets as a girl, so every day after court, he would bring her back all kinds of confections. She really did love them. When he was there, she would eat politely and sparingly. But after he left, the little lady would quietly finish every last piece. She was still just a girl. He'd simply thought of it as keeping a younger sister at home. Then disaster struck. His beloved betrayed him, his mother died tragically, and the smooth road he had walked his whole life suddenly collapsed into ruins. Crushed by grief, his will to live nearly crumbled, but she appeared in that moment. Gone was the quiet, demure woman of the past. 2 sharp slaps and a string of calm, cutting words pulled him back from the edge of despair. He realized then, he had misjudged her. She wasn't timid at all. She was brave. Within that small, slender body lived the courage he lacked. Right then, he thought, if one day he could rebuild the Duke's household, he would buy her all the sweets in the capital, just to watch her eat them. What a foolish girl she had been, having his children all on her own. It was the first time in his life he ever wrote letters begging for help, even reaching out to the cousin princess he had never gotten along with. He was no longer in the capital. His wife was all alone. He asked them, please look after her well. On the 5th day of starvation, he bit through his own wrist, drinking his own blood just to survive, dragging himself up from the dirt. He thought, I can't die. In the capital, thousands of miles away, his wife was still waiting for him to come home. He owed her far too much, and he would repay her slowly for the rest of his life.